Welcome to WhyRobbie. This is a show about the relationships between businesses, their products, and the people who actually use them. My name is Nat Green. I'm a designer based out of Toronto, and what I've always found most interesting is thinking about and discovering why people make certain decisions and use certain products. This is important to me in design because having a naturally curious and critical mind makes me branch out into many different solutions when I'm looking at tackling a problem. And what I found is when I understand why, it makes identifying the best candidates as far as solutions go for that problem much easier, and therefore streamlines the process and also makes it easier, again in my experience, for others around me and others I'm working with to understand why I'm making the decisions I'm making. Or it's easier for me to make the decisions because if I'm aligned with my teammates, say in product engineering or marketing, then I'll feel more confident, they'll feel more confident, and together we should come out with a better product overall. What I want to talk about this week is a business called Value Village, or Savers in the US. Value Village is special to me because I found myself going there a lot in my late teens and early 20s. Even now, when I have the time, outside of the pandemic, I always find it super interesting to just kind of go in and stroll around and see what you can find, whether it's clothes or random household items, even furniture. It's not the most sanitary place to pick up a piece of furniture, I feel. It's not like you can just toss it in the washing machine, but I do find you discover some interesting things no matter what Value Village you go. And it's super interesting because the inventory of that Value Village is really a product of the people that live within that area close to the Value Village, right? So you have this element of surprise, this element of predictability in knowing what kind of stuff you'll find, but also joy in the randomness of the individual things that you might find. And that is an interesting thing because there's that concept of reward that's expected, but it's variable. And I think when you look across different products and businesses, online and in person, really interesting and exciting ones, or the ones close to us, typically have some sort of that element to the model, whether they know it or not. I'm assuming most times they know it. I would hope so. But we'll talk about that later. I want to talk about a brief background on Value Village and then think about the different people that engage and find value at a Value Village, and then additionally why they're still like the brick and mortar Craigslist for some reason. I as far as I know, Value Village hasn't touched e-commerce just yet. And then finally, what the opportunity is, I think, for Value Village and Savers. Value Village has somewhere between 300 and 350 stores internationally, and they haven't tapped into one of the biggest retail trends of the last 10 years, right? So I'm not exactly sure why, but I'd like to think about that and maybe talk about it a bit. Alright, so Value Village or Savers, again, I don't know if I mentioned this. Savers and Value Village is a secondhand thrift store, or secondhand clothing store, you might say. It's a thrift shop. It's a chain thrift shop. Value Village Savers was founded in 1954 in San Francisco in the Mission District by this guy named Bill Ellison. A few years later, Bill opened up a second shop under the name Value Village in Washington, and that's where the headquarters are based right now for Savers. Between 54 and 2000, they opened up about 180 stores across North America and Australia. The first store that they opened up in Canada was in Vancouver. That was under the Value Village brand, and then all the other Savers locations within Canada are also under Value Village, with the exception of the ones in Quebec. So now, 66 years later, Savers has around 300 or 350 locations between Australia and North America. The way they work is that they pay local charities to have an exclusive partnership with them. They'll pick up the charity's clothes in bulk. So they'll take a portion of what they get from those charities and they'll put them on their sales floors. And then what they'll do with the rest is ship it overseas to clothing recyclers or garment recyclers, which can either dispose of it in a responsible manner, or they'll reuse the garments and sell them themselves. So Value Village is great because you'll go there, and again, you'll never really know exactly what you'll find, but you have an idea that you'll find something interesting, right? So let's talk about who the people who frequent Value Village are and for what reasons they do so, right? So the ones I wanted to focus on, I think it's difficult to say who, without any real data, who goes there the most and for what reason. But in my mind, the three most popular ones are people who like actually need the savings, right? Or they're just super financially conscious of what they're spending on what you might call like fundamentals or the basics, kind of things like t-shirts, clothing for work, typically expensive jackets, even like pots and pans and stuff. So you would have this person as like the saver, say, right? And they will go to Value Village to find just deals on things that everybody needs for the household or say for work or just going out and about. I had to say out and about. I would say the second most popular is, I feel like not that many people would watch this, but I would say it is the hipsters of the world, the kind of like the city kids or young adults who are looking to express themselves, don't necessarily find the products that they're looking for at a reasonable price in just standard like retail stores. I think real simply, like you kind of get that streetwear vibe from these like expensive name brands. You get that same look in these older like vintage, say, or even just like lightly worn older clothing, right? Even shoes, you kind of get like a similar aesthetic. And the thing is, you can go to Value Village and find this stuff for, dirt cheap, like fractions of what they'll cost brand new. I think what's also tied into like little subsections of that type of person or persona are the person looking for like brand name items at a discount, which you can go to even like Winners or say Poshmark or the Real, I think it's called. You can go to these places and find like much more curated selections of secondhand luxury items. But the thing with those are they're less accessible in a way. Like, right, Poshmark or Real might be a better place to find more of these things, but I think it's difficult because I mean, Poshmark is solely online. RealReal has a couple locations, I think. But the thing is, like, if you're ordering these things online, it's difficult to determine the exact sizing or how a thing will look when you're wearing it. Whereas if you go to Value Village or any of these like in-store retail places, that's still like a very valuable piece of the shopping experience that those places bring you. On the other side of things, with say Facebook Marketplace or Kijiji / Craigslist, right? They're basically the same thing. You have this whole new can of worms in the retail process or purchasing process where you have to, haggle on pricing and also on meeting on a time and place because they're not always willing to ship, right? So again, Value Village provides that value where you can just walk into the store and try things on. So the third person that I want to talk about, or third, say, persona of a shopper at Value Village is the reseller. And that's the most interesting one to me because these people are going into Value Village probably like on a regular basis along with some other retail stores or secondhand stores and looking to find deals on clothes that make sense for them to pick up and resell on different platforms like say Poshmark or Facebook Marketplace or Kijiji or Craigslist, one of those, right? So that was interesting because there's this two-sided thing where they have to go and discover and find and purchase, right? And then that's only half the battle. Like they're not really looking just to wear it or to wear it at all. They're looking to resell that, right? So they have this this chain of events happening that involves purchasing and reselling. I think what would be interesting, because I don't know if I'll have them out by the time this video or this podcast comes out, but what I'm doing is working on illustrating what that process looks like for each of these personas. So what the process, looks like for, say, the savvy saver or the hipster. I apologize for people who don't resonate with that, but actually are, as far as the attributes are in my mind. And then what's that look like for the reseller, right? So I'm looking to illustrate these things, and I want to look and dissect each of those and where the biggest pain points or the most friction is within those flows for each of those personas, and then highlight the opportunities that you might be able to, or if we were working at that company or a business or a parallel business, you could actually pull out of that and build solutions for. The thing is, when you look at each one individually, it can get pretty in depth. So I'm just gonna mention these things for now, and then I think in subsequent episodes I'll probably dive deeper into what each one of those look like, and then also where the friction sits and what the opportunity might be there to capitalize on that pain point or that friction. What we can talk about though across the different personas, even just those three that I mentioned, is this single overarching concept of variable reward, right? And I'm gonna, as much of a meme as it seems to have become, I'm gonna use Nir Eyal's hooked example, like the hook model, what do they call it? Sorry, the hook canvas. So I'm gonna use that as an example, right? Because what's interesting, I think what keeps Value Village competitive in my mind is this idea that people just naturally want to go back there. And let me reference the hook canvas now, because it is this cycle. Like I feel like you rarely have somebody who goes to Value Village just one time. So if you look at the trigger, I think varies across personas, right? So the idea with the hook canvas is you have this trigger that makes you want to take an action. You take the action, and there may or may not be a reward. but you know sometimes there is that reward. I mean, you know that on different times when you get that reward, it'll usually vary in what it looks like. So that piece is, I think, what most interests or keeps us hooked, right? And then followed by that in the canvas is this idea of the investment of time or resources or energy, and then it just loops around, right? So for each persona, the trigger I think varies, because if you're say a reseller, you might just need more inventory, or you might have more demand for a thing that you don't have the supply of. If you're the savvy saver, you might just need a suit jacket for your friend's wedding that is coming up in 2 weeks or whatever, right? Or maybe you spilt coffee on one of your work shirts, and you need to replace it. You can go to Value Village, like that's the trigger right there. Or for the hipster, I need a better word for that, or a better name. But for now, for the hipster, you might just, you might say, I'm going to the park on Saturday, or I have this party to go to on whatever, like this work party, right? What am I going to wear? Or if you're one of the people who, like, say, makes their own clothes, or you're in fashion, or you're like shooting models or whatever, you might, make your own garments out of a couple of things, saying that's a cheap and low risk way to do that. So the triggers vary, right? So the action is the same. They're getting to the store and they're browsing. The variable reward is the same, right? Because although they're looking for, different things, I mean, they're not even looking for different things. They're all looking for the same thing, and they all receive the same kind of reward and discovery at Value Village. And then the investment, I think the investment varies, but on a level it's basically the same, because you're going, and I don't know if you have that habit when you go to, say, Winners or Value Village, and you're at the t-shirt rack and you're just flicking over and over and over and over and over and over and over. It's almost kind of like soothing, like it's kind of meditative, like the sound the hangers make when you clink them together, and then that is the game in itself. That's where the variable reward comes in, right? And even the sound of that stuff, or the feeling and the motion of like pulling those shirts or those pants or those sweaters back, or like walking down the aisles and pushing the coats aside over and over and over again, looking for that thing that you need or you like or your customers want, right? And discovering that perfect jacket, like an old like Givenchy sweater, I may have said that wrong, or like a weird vintage pair of Asics that actually still look cool, right? It's like, that's the thing that keeps Value Village competitive and interesting, is you go there and it's like a game. It's like, not condoning, or what's the word for it? Not encouraging gambling, right? But responsibly, like, gambling is like very interesting. I would say it's not, I wouldn't call it fun, because it can be damaging and like really upsetting at times. But say a video game, right, where you're not actually using your own money, but you're traveling around, and there's like different, I don't know, boxes that you have to smash, and some boxes have like a feather in it, but other boxes have like a load of treasure or something that you can use towards forwarding your mission or whatever it is, right? That is Value Village. And that's the thing that I find super interesting about Value Village, right? Is this almost like accidental idea of and I would love to know if it is intentional or not, but this idea that you can go in there and just find like the coolest shit, right, for like relatively cheap. You can do the same thing online. You can browse like eBay, or again Poshmark. Facebook Marketplace is like that, because you always have new shit coming up, right? And it tends to like recommend or show you stuff that's most in line with what you've been searching for. So you always seem to get those really like quality recommendations, and it's a little bit addicting, but it's not the same as going into a physical place and like searching and browsing. And you can make it like, you can go there with a friend and all of a sudden you're like calling each other over, you're like yelling from across the store, like waving these stupid fucking shirts around. You know, it's just it's literally like a game that's different from any, in my opinion, any other physical resale store that I've visited. But that's I mean, it's like a blessing and a curse, because I read somewhere that what they found was that Value Village was doing $1 billion in revenue every year. And I would assume that their margins are pretty good. And this is a problem because this leads to, I think, complacency in a way. Because if you have a business that's growing and making money, right, and it's also owned by a couple private equity firms. So I just don't know. I think that combination is kind of dangerous because it uses this traditional business model. Again, as far as I know, it hasn't touched e-commerce at all. Still makes $1 billion a year, and is owned by these businesses that aren't necessarily concerned with research and development, right? So that's one concern that I have with Value Village, is that they're stagnant as far as like their offering to the people who use their stores and shop at their stores go, like very, very stagnant. Their business model has virtually been the exact same since they opened in 54, right? But on the flip side, like this is also really good because if the right company picks up Value Village, or by some miracle they have some injection of like need for innovation within the business or those private equity firms, right? They can easily tap into like say existing platforms like Facebook Marketplace, or I don't even know why they don't like leverage like Craigslist or something, or Kijiji, right? And basically create their own store, or eBay. But I think what would be really interesting is if they looked at making their own platform and building out their own network of, say, online shopping, combined with that really interesting experience of going in and kind of like treasure hunting each store. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and look at this trend of, not a trend. I feel like trend, that word carries some baggage, right? But I would say look at where people's minds are as far as recycling and responsible retail goes, right? Like I think together with that collective mindset of more of the public acknowledging that waste and say fast fashion, for example, was becoming more widely acknowledged. And for that reason, Value Village has an interesting opportunity in one, they can promote themselves as this company, which they do a little bit already. They can promote themselves as this company that's serving the public responsibly. And I mean, flat out, they just have like a very reliable business model in that they can acquire these clothes for cheap and sell them for a large markup. But then the third thing, the cherry on top, is the fact that the experience of going into a Value Village is actually a good time. Like it's actually fun, right? So I would say like these are a few reasons why Value Village has lots of room to grow. And I think that they already have a strong relationship with the people that purchase items there. I think the one recurring hiccup I see is that their prices are increasing or have been increasing over time. Yeah, it sounds like they've acknowledged, like Value Village and Savers has acknowledged that. But yeah, I think in closing, Value Village is like oddly traditional and still interesting, which I think just makes for a weird but competitive mix because they have lots of room to grow because they haven't tapped into newer technology and newer retail trends yet. I think it's important to acknowledge the different types of people who shop at Value Village. Like there are very distinct differences between a few of them, which I'll go into again in separate episodes, just so I can go a little bit deeper on those. And yeah, I look forward to seeing where they go. Like we're in a lockdown in Toronto right now, but I'm really excited to see where Value Village goes. I hope it goes up rather than down. I hope the pandemic didn't impact them too negatively. That's all I got. Nat Green, this is WhyRobbie, a show where we look at the relationships between businesses, their products and or services, and the people that use them. I'm a UX designer located in Toronto. If anyone who sees this, you have any questions, you can reach me at Nat Green at formdreams, formdreams.ca, or it's just, I think I'm Nat Green on Twitter. And again, look out for future episodes. Alright, that's it.